There is something your eyes have been trying to tell you, and there is a good chance you have been missing it. I say this because after nearly a decade working in emergency medicine, I have noticed a pattern that most people never think about. People come in with a heart problem, a blood sugar problem, a blood pressure problem, and when we look closely, the signs were already there in their eyes, sometimes years earlier. Not dramatic signs, quiet ones, a slight change in how the blood vessels at the back of the eye looked on a previous examination. A gradual shift in night vision that got brushed off as just getting older. Dry, gritty eyes that were chalked up to screen time or tiredness. And by the time these people are sitting in front of me in A&E, the problems have progressed far beyond what could have been caught with a little earlier attention. What worries me is how often this gets dismissed. Most people think of their eyes as something separate from the rest of their health. You get your vision tested every couple of years, you update your prescription, maybe you try some drops when things feel dry, and that is about it. But that approach misses something important. Something that could change the way you think about your health from today. The retina, the thin layer of tissue at the back of your eye, is the only place in the human body where we can look directly at living blood vessels without cutting anything open. And those tiny vessels are connected to every major system you care about. Your heart, your blood sugar, your brain, your inflammatory load. When those systems start to struggle, your eyes often show it first, sometimes years before a blood test or a scan picks it up. And that is what this video is about. I am going to walk you through 5 hidden connections between your eyes and the rest of your body, ranked from the most commonly overlooked to the most urgent. Then I am going to give you 5 practical daily habits that protect all of these systems at once. And at the end, I will give you a simple framework so you know exactly what to watch for, what can wait, and what should not be ignored. Because when it comes to your eyes, the goal is not fear. The goal is earlier understanding. Let us start with the connection that catches the most people off guard. The first connection is between your eyes and your blood sugar. Now, most people know that diabetes can eventually affect vision. That is not news. But here is what most people miss. The damage often begins long before anyone uses the word diabetes. It begins during the years when blood sugar is only slightly elevated, what we call insulin resistance, meaning your cells are gradually becoming less responsive to insulin, the hormone that moves sugar out of your blood and into your cells where it is actually needed. Think about what that means. During that window, which can stretch over 5, 10, even 15 years before a formal diagnosis, the tiniest blood vessels in your body are already under strain. They are being bathed in slightly too much glucose, day after day, month after month. And where are some of the smallest, most delicate blood vessels in your entire body? In your retina. Think of your retina like a high-resolution camera sensor. It needs a constant, precise supply of oxygen and nutrients delivered through incredibly fine blood vessels. Vessels so small you cannot see them with the naked eye. When blood sugar stays even slightly elevated over time, those vessels start to stiffen, leak, or become blocked. The camera sensor starts to degrade, not dramatically at first, but quietly. Pixel by pixel, so to speak. This is what we call diabetic retinopathy in its earliest stages. And the troubling part is that you often do not notice it. Your central vision can still feel normal, there is no pain. No obvious warning sign, until the damage reaches a certain threshold, and then the changes accelerate. Here is a number that should make you stop and think. Roughly 1 in 3 people with type 2 diabetes already has some degree of retinal damage at the time they are first diagnosed. Not years later, not after decades of uncontrolled sugar. At the moment of diagnosis. Just think about that for a second. That tells you how long the process was quietly building before anyone caught it. But here is the part that matters practically. And this is the reassuring bit. You do not have to wait for a diabetes diagnosis to protect your eyes from this. The same things that stabilize blood sugar, walking after meals, eating protein and fiber before starchy carbohydrates, reducing ultra-processed food, protecting your sleep. Those same habits directly reduce the metabolic strain on the blood vessels feeding your retina. And if you are over 50, and especially if you have a family history of diabetes, or if your waist measurement has been creeping upward, your eyes are one of the first places to show that your blood sugar management is under pressure. A routine eye examination with retinal imaging can pick up changes that a standard fasting glucose test might miss entirely. That is the first connection. Your blood sugar talks to your eyes long before it talks to your doctor. And that brings me to the second connection, which in some ways is even more overlooked. The second connection is between your eyes and your blood pressure. I know blood pressure does not sound exciting. It is one of those things people hear about so often that it almost loses its weight. But stay with me on this, because it connects directly to something you care about a great deal. Staying independent as you get older. being able to drive safely at night, being able to read without everything swimming after 10 minutes, being able to recognize faces across a room. These are not abstract health goals. These are the things that make life feel like your own. Your blood vessels are a continuous system. The same forces acting on the arteries in your heart are acting on the vessels in your eyes. The difference is that the vessels in your retina are among the most fragile in your entire circulation. They are like the thinnest pipes in your plumbing system, and when the pressure in the system rises, even modestly, the thin pipes show the strain first. What does that look like in practice? The small retinal arteries can narrow, thicken, or develop tiny areas of damage that an eye specialist can see during a dilated examination. Changes that are often visible before blood pressure readings look particularly alarming on paper. There is a landmark study, the Blue Mountains Eye Study, out of Australia, that followed thousands of people over many years and found that changes in the retinal blood vessels were independently associated with a higher risk of stroke and cardiovascular events, even after adjusting for traditional risk factors like cholesterol and smoking. In plain terms, the eyes were telling a story that the blood pressure cuff alone was not fully capturing. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. My blood pressure is checked at my GP surgery, and it comes back fine, so this probably does not apply to me. But here is the catch. Blood pressure fluctuates. A lot. It can be higher in the morning when your stress hormones surge, higher after poor sleep, higher when you are anxious sitting in a waiting room. A single reading in a calm consulting room does not always reflect what your vessels are experiencing over 24 hours. That reading is a snapshot. What you actually need is the pattern. This is why home blood pressure monitoring matters, and I would argue it matters especially for people over 60. Measuring your blood pressure at home, twice a day, for 7 consecutive days, gives you a moving picture instead of a single still photograph. And that moving picture is far more useful for protecting both your heart and your eyes. But I need to be honest about something here, because this is important, and it is something many people get wrong. For older adults, the goal is not always the lowest possible blood pressure number. In emergency medicine, I see the consequences of both sides of this problem: untreated high blood pressure and overtreated blood pressure. When blood pressure drops too low in someone whose arteries have stiffened with age, they can become dizzy when they stand up, lose their balance, fall, and suffer a hip fracture, which in someone over 75 can be genuinely life-threatening. I have seen this pattern more times than I would like. The fall itself can be the beginning of a cascade that steals independence faster than the blood pressure ever would have. So the message is not lower is always better. The message is, know your pattern, understand what your eyes and your readings are telling you, and work with your doctor to find the right range for your body, your age, and your situation. That nuance matters enormously. Now, the third connection surprised me the most when I first encountered the evidence, and it is one I think everyone watching this needs to hear. The third connection is between your eyes and your brain. This one is not talked about nearly enough, and it may be the most important connection in this entire video. Your retina is not just connected to your brain through the optic nerve. Developmentally, the retina is actually part of the central nervous system. It is, in a very real biological sense, an extension of your brain that happens to sit at the back of your eye. So when we see changes in the retina, we may be getting a window, quite literally, into what is happening in the brain itself. And the research here is striking. The Rotterdam study, one of the largest population-based studies of aging in Europe, found that people with age-related macular degeneration, the gradual breakdown of the macula, the central part of your retina responsible for sharp, detailed vision, had a significantly higher risk of developing dementia over the following years. This was not a marginal increase. The association was strong enough that researchers began asking whether retinal imaging could eventually be used as an early screening tool for cognitive decline. Now let me be clear, because I do not want to leave anyone sitting with unnecessary anxiety. Having macular degeneration does not mean you will develop dementia. These are associations, not certainties. Correlation is not causation, and many people with macular changes never develop cognitive problems. But the overlap makes biological sense, and understanding why is the key to knowing what to do about it. Both conditions involve 3 shared mechanisms. First, damage to small blood vessels. Second, increased oxidative stress, which is essentially accumulated cellular damage from unstable molecules. Think of it as rust building up inside your cells. And third, chronic low-grade inflammation. The same underlying processes that quietly degrade the macula are the same ones that quietly degrade brain tissue, slowly, over years, often without clear symptoms until a significant amount of damage has already accumulated. Here is the way I think about it. If the retina is a branch of the brain sitting right behind your eye, then what is happening to the retina is very likely happening to the brain at the same time, through the same mechanisms. Protecting one means protecting the other. You are not defending two separate things. You are defending the same system. And this is the part that should make you feel empowered, not frightened. The lifestyle factors that protect the retina, antioxidant-rich foods, omega-3 fatty acids, regular physical activity, blood sugar control, blood pressure management, are the exact same factors that show the strongest evidence for slowing cognitive decline. Every walk you take after dinner, every portion of leafy greens, every night of decent sleep, those are not just protecting your eyes. They are protecting the organ that makes you, you. If you have a parent or a close relative who experienced macular degeneration or cognitive decline, this information matters even more. Both conditions have genetic components that interact with lifestyle. You cannot change your genes, but you absolutely can change the environment those genes are operating in. And small, consistent changes in that environment can shift the trajectory meaningfully over years and decades. Which brings me to the fourth connection, and this is the thread that ties everything together. The fourth connection is chronic inflammation, and this is the engine behind almost everything I have just described. Inflammation is your body's defense system. When you cut your finger, the redness, warmth, and swelling that follows, that is acute inflammation, and it is doing exactly what it should. The problem is when inflammation becomes chronic, low-level, persistent, and systemic, humming away in the background like electrical noise that never switches off. Chronic inflammation is now understood to be a central driver behind cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, neurodegeneration, and, directly, the breakdown of the retina and the structures around it. It accelerates the damage to the macula. It worsens dry eye disease. It contributes to the gradual stiffening of the lens, which is part of why close-up vision deteriorates with age. And it disrupts the repair processes your eyes depend on during sleep, the very time when your body is supposed to be restoring those delicate structures. Here is what concerns me as a doctor. Many people live with chronic inflammation for years without knowing it. They do not feel acutely ill, they just feel a bit more tired than they used to, a bit more stiff in the morning, a bit more foggy in the afternoon. Their joints complain a little more. Their sleep is a little worse. Their eyes are a little drier, a little more sensitive to light, a little more easily fatigued after reading or screen time. They chalk it all up to normal aging. And sometimes, some of it is just aging. But often, more often than people realize, a meaningful portion of that decline is being accelerated by an inflammatory load that could be reduced. What drives chronic inflammation? The list is not mysterious, and that is actually good news, because it means the levers are within reach. Excess visceral fat, the kind that wraps around your internal organs, is one of the biggest culprits, because visceral fat behaves almost like a toxic endocrine organ, pumping out inflammatory signals constantly. Ultra-processed food, disrupted sleep, chronic psychological stress, sedentary behavior, excessive alcohol, smoking, high and unstable blood sugar, which connects us right back to the very first point we discussed. And here is the reassuring part. When you reduce the inflammatory load, the benefits do not show up in just one place. They show up across multiple systems at the same time. Your blood vessels function better, your blood sugar stabilizes more easily, your brain gets better perfusion, and your eyes, those delicate structures that depend on clean circulation and low oxidative stress, begin to function and repair more effectively. You do not have to fix everything at once. You are looking for direction, not perfection. Even a small, sustained reduction in your inflammatory load makes a measurable difference over months and years. That is not wishful thinking. That is how the biology actually works. Now, before I get into the practical protection framework, there is one more connection I want to cover, because it explains why some people's vision declines much faster than others, even at the exact same age. The fifth connection is microvascular health, the health of your very smallest blood vessels. This is different from large vessel cardiovascular disease, the kind that causes heart attacks and major strokes. Microvascular disease affects the tiny capillaries that feed your organs at the cellular level, and your eyes are one of the most microvascular-dependent organs in your body. When your microvascular system is healthy, blood flows smoothly to every part of your retina, delivering oxygen and clearing away waste products efficiently. When it is not healthy, when those tiny vessels have been damaged by years of elevated blood sugar, high blood pressure, smoking, or chronic inflammation, the delivery system starts to fail. Think of it like irrigation. Your retina is a field that needs water, delivered through very fine channels. If those channels silt up, narrow, or start leaking, parts of the field begin to dry out. Cells that are not getting enough oxygen and nutrients start to deteriorate. And because the retina has very limited ability to regenerate itself, those losses tend to be cumulative. They add up, year after year, quietly. This is a major reason why two people the same age can have dramatically different vision. One has maintained reasonable microvascular health through decades of regular movement, decent nutrition, managed blood pressure, and stable blood sugar. The other has spent decades with uncontrolled metabolic risk factors, quietly degrading their microvasculature, the fine plumbing that feeds every organ, but hits the eyes earliest because the vessels there are the most delicate of all. And here is what people often do not appreciate. The gap between those two people is frequently wider than genetics alone would predict. A meaningful portion of it is driven by accumulated daily habits. Habits that are within your control to change. Even now, even if you feel like you are starting late, you are not. The body responds. It always responds to better conditions. Now, before I give you the 5 habits, I need to address something I see constantly, and it is one of the biggest mistakes people make with their eye health. I know what many of you are probably thinking right now. I already take an eye supplement. Is that not enough? And I understand why you might think that. The supplement industry has done an extraordinary job of convincing people that a pill can replace the complexity of what your eyes actually need. You see bottles marketed with phrases like complete eye support or total vision formula, and it feels proactive. It feels like you are doing something meaningful. But here is the reality. The AREDS 2 trial, one of the most rigorous clinical trials ever conducted on eye health nutrition, did show that specific nutrients, particularly lutein, zeaxanthin, and omega-3 fatty acids, can slow the progression of age-related macular degeneration in people who already have intermediate-stage disease. That is real evidence, and it matters. But, and this is the part most people never hear, those nutrients work best when they come from food, are absorbed alongside the natural fats and cofactors present in a whole meal, and are part of a broader pattern that also addresses blood sugar, inflammation, blood pressure, and physical activity. A supplement sitting on top of a highly processed diet, chronic stress, poor sleep, and no physical activity is not going to protect your eyes in any meaningful way. It is like adding a coat of paint to a wall while the foundation is cracking. The paint might make the surface look better temporarily, but it is not fixing the structural problem underneath. Food first, movement first, sleep first. Then, if your doctor or eye specialist recommends a targeted supplement based on your specific situation and stage of disease, by all means consider it. But do not let a pill become a substitute for the habits that actually drive the outcome. That is not how your body works. And deep down, I think most of you already sense that. So, with all 5 connections covered, and that myth out of the way, let me give you the 5 daily habits that protect all of these systems at once. I am going to rank them from lowest friction to broadest impact. Habit number 1. Walk after eating. I keep coming back to this across my videos because the evidence keeps getting stronger, and because it is so simple that people underestimate it. A 10 to 15 minute walk after your main meals. It does not need to be vigorous. It does not need to be far. Just moving. Reduces your post-meal blood sugar spike significantly. Here is why. Your muscles contract and pull glucose out of the blood partly, without needing insulin to do the work. Think of your muscles as metabolic sponges. When you move them after a meal, they soak up that excess glucose before it has the chance to damage the small vessels in your retina and elsewhere. Lower blood sugar spikes mean less strain on the blood vessels feeding your eyes, less insulin resistance building up over time, less inflammatory signaling. This single habit touches every one of the 5 connections we have discussed today. You do not need special equipment. You do not need a gym membership. You do not need to run. You need to move gently after you eat. Start with after dinner tonight. If that goes well, add after lunch. If you can only manage 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes. That is enough to begin. The body does not need perfection. It needs the signal. Habit number 2. Build your meals around color and omega-3 fatty acids. The specific nutrients that protect the retina most powerfully are lutein and zeaxanthin, found abundantly in dark leafy greens, orange and yellow vegetables, and egg yolks, and omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, from oily fish, walnuts, and flax seeds. Lutein and zeaxanthin do something remarkable. Once you eat them, they physically concentrate in the macula. They sit in the tissue itself and act like built-in sunglasses, filtering high-energy blue light and neutralizing oxidative stress right where it matters most. The more you eat consistently over time, the denser that protective layer becomes. You are building up a shield inside your own eye, layer by layer. Omega-3s, particularly DHA, make up a large proportion of the structural fats in the retina itself. Without enough of them, the retina becomes more vulnerable to damage and less efficient at repair. Omega-3s also have strong anti-inflammatory properties, which directly addresses the chronic inflammation connection we discussed. You do not need anything exotic for this. A few portions of dark green vegetables a week. Think leafy greens, broccoli, peas, a couple of portions of oily fish, some eggs, and please eat the yolks, because that is where the lutein and zeaxanthin actually are. Pair your greens with a small amount of healthy fat, olive oil, avocado, a few nuts, because these nutrients are fat-soluble. Your body absorbs them much better when they travel alongside fat. This is not about finding a single superfood. It is about building a consistent pattern of real food with genuine nutrient density. Boring, repeatable, effective. That is the formula. Habit number 3, protect your sleep. Your eyes do their most critical repair work during deep sleep. The process of clearing metabolic waste from the retina and the brain accelerates during the night, driven by biological mechanisms that only function properly when your sleep is adequate in both duration and quality. Poor sleep is also one of the strongest drivers of chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, and elevated blood pressure, all of which circle directly back to the connections we covered. If you are consistently sleeping fewer than 6 hours, or your sleep is constantly broken, your eyes are quietly paying a price that you may not notice for years. But the damage accumulates, night after night, and it compounds. The practical focus here is straightforward. Consistent bed and wake times, even on weekends. Reducing screen brightness in the evening. Keeping the bedroom cool and dark. Limiting caffeine after midday. And yes, that includes tea. Eating your last meal at least 2 to 3 hours before bed, so your body is not digesting when it should be repairing. These are not glamorous interventions, but they are among the most powerful things you can do for your eyes, your brain, and your metabolic health, all at the same time. Habit number 4. Monitor your blood pressure at home. If you are over 50, buy a validated upper arm blood pressure monitor. They are not expensive, and measure twice a day, morning and evening, for 1 week every 3 months. Write down the numbers. Look for the pattern over those 7 days, not any single reading in isolation. This gives you and your doctor far better data than a single clinic visit, and it connects directly to protecting the delicate blood vessels in your retina. If your average home readings over that week are consistently above 135/85, that is worth a conversation, not panic, but a conversation with your doctor. Do not feel silly about tracking this. It is one of the most useful pieces of health information you can generate at home, and it costs almost nothing once you have the monitor. Many people find it reassuring, not stressful, because it replaces uncertainty with data, and data gives you control. Habit number 5. Reduce your ultra-processed food intake. This is not about being perfect, it is about direction. Ultra-processed food, the kind with long ingredient lists, added sugars, industrial seed oils, artificial additives, and textures that do not exist anywhere in nature, drives inflammation, destabilizes blood sugar, contributes to visceral fat accumulation, and provides almost none of the micronutrient density your eyes and brain need. It is calories without construction material, energy without the building blocks. You do not have to eliminate it completely, but if you can move from a pattern where most of your calories come from ultra-processed sources to one where most come from whole, single-ingredient foods, things you could recognize as actual food, things you could have picked up from a market stall, the downstream effects on your metabolic health, your inflammatory load, and your vision are substantial. A useful starting point, look at your last 3 meals. How many of the ingredients were real food? If the answer is not many, that is not a failure. That is information, and it tells you exactly where to start making a change. One better meal today is one better meal your eyes had to work with tonight. That is enough to begin. Now, I promised you a framework for knowing what to watch for and what to do about it. Here it is. 4 signals, ranked from least urgent to most urgent. And I want you to remember these, because they could make a real difference. Signal 1. Gradual changes in night vision or increased light sensitivity. If driving at night feels harder than it used to, if oncoming headlights are producing noticeably more glare, or if you find yourself needing brighter light to read comfortably in the evening, make a note of when it started and how it has progressed. Mention it at your next routine eye examination. This can be one of the earlier signs of retinal change or lens changes. It is usually not urgent, but it is worth investigating, rather than dismissing as just getting older. Sometimes it is just getting older, but sometimes it is your eyes trying to tell you something else is going on. Signal 2. Persistent dryness, grittiness, redness, or episodes of blurred vision that come and go. These can reflect chronic inflammation affecting the surface of the eye and the tear film. Common, and often very manageable, but worth looking into, especially if it is affecting your daily comfort or your ability to read, work, or enjoy your evenings. Mention it at your next appointment, or book a routine one if you have not had your eyes examined in the last 12 months. Signal 3. Your eye specialist mentions vessel changes or early macular changes during an examination. This is the one I really want you to pay attention to. If during a dilated eye examination your optometrist or ophthalmologist mentions vessel narrowing, small hemorrhages, early drusen deposits in the macula, or any other structural change, do not just accept a new prescription for glasses and leave. Ask what those findings might mean for your wider health. Consider them a signal from your body, an early message, to review your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your weight, your diet, and the 5 habits we just covered. Book a GP appointment to discuss. This is your eyes giving you information that many people never receive until much later in the disease process. Use it. Signal 4. Any sudden change. A sudden increase in floaters, flashes of light in your peripheral vision, a shadow or curtain effect coming across part of your visual field. Sudden loss of vision in one eye. These are not gradual aging. These are potentially urgent. Do not wait for a routine appointment. Do not tell yourself it will probably go away. Seek same-day assessment. Call your eye emergency service or go to A&E. Time matters with these presentations. The pattern to remember is simple. Gradual changes deserve attention at your next appointment. Retinal findings from an examination are a prompt to review your whole health. And sudden changes deserve urgent action today, not tomorrow. Today. So let me bring this all together. Your eyes are not a separate system sitting in isolation from the rest of your body. They are one of the most sensitive indicators of what is happening inside you. The blood vessels in your retina reflect the health of your cardiovascular system. The macula reflects your metabolic and inflammatory load. And because the retina is an extension of your central nervous system, the health of your eyes and the health of your brain are far more connected than most people ever realize. The 5 connections we covered, blood sugar, blood pressure, brain health, chronic inflammation, and microvascular damage, are not 5 separate problems. They are 5 expressions of the same underlying processes. And the 5 habits, walking after meals, eating color and omega-3s, protecting your sleep, monitoring your blood pressure, and reducing ultra-processed food, address all 5 at once. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently, cumulatively, meaningfully. If you remember one thing from this video, let it be this. Your eyes are often the first place your body whispers that something deeper is changing. The people who do best, the ones who keep their vision, their sharpness, their independence, their ability to drive at night, to read to their grandchildren, to recognize faces across a room, to live on their own terms for as long as possible, are the ones who learn to listen to that whisper early, before it becomes a shout. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to change everything overnight. You need to pick a direction and start moving. 1 habit. 2 weeks. That is enough to begin shifting the trajectory. And if you notice any of the warning signs I described, especially the sudden ones, do not feel silly about getting them checked. Do not wait. Do not talk yourself out of it. Your eyes are talking to you. Listen to them. If this was useful, I have a video coming up next that goes deeper into one of these connections, and I think it might change the way you think about a habit you already do every day. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it. And if you found value in this, a like genuinely helps other people find it too. If there is a topic you want me to cover, drop it in the comments below. I read them, and they shape what I make next. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.